Hello and welcome back to another full step-by-step PC build guide, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build a PC in the latest case from Hyte. This is the X50. If you see any parts you like, you'll find links to everything that I've used in the description, so let's get stuck in and take a detailed look at this case. So the first thing that stands out about this case to me is the laminated tempered glass panel that extends from the side of the case all the way up and over the top of the case. To remove the tempered glass panel, there's a notch at the bottom you can get your hand into. First of all, you're going to lift the panel straight up, and then you're going to pull the panel backwards to remove it. And our other side panel is removed in exactly the same way. And our mesh front panel can simply be pulled away. And there's no additional dust filters behind our front or side mesh panel, but as the holes in the mesh are quite fine, this shouldn't be a problem. And our case's one and only dust filter is at the bottom. It's magnetically attached, so it can simply be pulled away. Taking a look at our case's top I/O, we've got a power button, two USB Type A ports, a single Type C port, and a combined headphone and microphone jack. So now we've got all the panels off, you can get a better look at the case. The other slightly unusual feature of this case is your power supply is going to go at the top, but the main advantage of this is it's going to open up really good cooling potential at the bottom. So down at the bottom of the case you can fit up to three 120mm fans, and they're going to be installed in this recessed area, and we've got lots of little cutouts here to pass your fan cables through to the back. At the rear of the case you can fit a single 120mm fan. On the side of the case you can fit up to three 120mm fans, or up to a 360mm radiator, up to a maximum thickness of 70mm. It is important to say radiators and fans in multiples of 140 aren't supported here. While at the front of the case it's up to three 120 or three 140mm fans, and in terms of radiator support it's up to a 360mm radiator, and you've got a little bit more thickness here, up to a maximum thickness of 105mm. So one of the main reasons you've got this improved compatibility at the front is the fan stroke radiator bracket extends out from the front of the case, and it goes into that curved mesh front panel. So the bracket's held on with two screws, one at the top and one at the bottom, and with these removed the bracket can simply be lifted away. So you are able to adjust how much this bracket sticks out at the front. To do it, you're going to have to remove a screw in the middle, and then you'll notice that this little panel can be tilted out and away. So taking a look here, there's four different positions you can install the bracket in, and that's going to adjust the offset by 1 centimeter per screw hole. So if we did want to move it all the way to the end, we just need to line the notches up and then replace the screw. And then we just need to do the same thing to the other side. So if we go ahead and set the bracket back into place, you'll notice that the gap has now disappeared, and this front bracket where you're able to mount your fans and radiators to is now flush to the case. So the case is compatible with motherboards up to E/ATX in size. You'll see there's no additional cutouts for back connector motherboards, and if you want to go with a CPU cutter, the maximum height supported is up to 170mm. You can see at the rear of the case we've got 7 horizontal expansion slot brackets. And in terms of graphics card support, the case supports graphics cards up to a maximum length of 430mm. So moving to the other side of the case, you'll see cable routing space looks to be pretty good. There's plenty of space behind the motherboard. And in terms of cable management, we've got plenty of Velcro cable straps to manage our cables. So as I've mentioned, your power supply is going to be installed at the top, and the case supports full-sized ATX power supplies up to a maximum length of 223mm. And you're going to install your power supply with the fan facing down the way, where it's going to get cooler from inside the case. We've got our case accessory box at the bottom we can remove, and with it removed you can see we've got a hard drive cage here. Now on the outside of the hard drive cage you are going to be able to mount a 3.5-inch drive. You can see the screw holes that we've got here. So you're simply going to set your drive into place and then screw it in from the back. To do that, of course, you're going to have to remove the drive cage. It's held on with a captive thumb screw, and once it's been loosened you can tilt the drive cage back and lift up to remove it. So taking a look at the back of the drive cage, you can see where you're going to use the screws to secure the 3.5-inch drive on the other side, and then these are the mounting holes for our 2.5-inch drives, and you're able to fit up to two 2.5-inch drives. So you're simply going to take your first 2.5-inch drive, slot it into place, and you see then the holes are then going to line up with these brackets here. You're going to secure it using 4 screws, and then you're going to be able to take your second 2.5-inch drive and slide along to where the holes match up, and again secure it with 4 screws. And you see the way they are staggered, you are still going to be able to plug all your cables in with 2 drives installed. So I'm going to install 3 120mm fans at the bottom set to intake. So to have the good side of the fan on display, we're going to have to add the reverse blades that come in the box with the fans. So to remove the standard fan blade, we just need to get our hands in behind and push forward. We can then take our reverse fan blade, line it up, and simply push it into place to secure it. So I've now changed the blades out in 3 of the fans. You'll notice on one side we've got gold pins, On the other side we've got gold contacts, and our fans are just going to join together magnetically. Just push them together and we've now got all 3 fans joined up. And onto the end with the gold pins we're going to connect our fan cable, which is also going to connect magnetically. So just before we set our fans into place, I'm going to pass the fan cable through to the back, and then I'm going to lower the fans down into place, and we'll secure the fans into place at the bottom using the screws that came with the fans. And then we can replace the bottom dust filter. So the magnetic connection isn't that strong between the fans, so I'm just going to set the first fan into place and feed the cable through, and then we can join the other 2 fans in. And we'll secure the fans into place at the back again using the screws that came with the fans. So that's me out of fancy magnetic fans, but I've got these standard PWM fans, and they come with short connectors out of the box, but you do get this long cable extension. So all we need to do is plug the cable extension into the fan. So we can set our fan into place at the back, and we'll get it secured into place. And we've got a rubber grommet just up here, so I'm going to pass our fan cable through it, and then we'll just route the excess cable over the top of our motherboard's I/O cutout. So it probably is overkill installing more fans at the front of the case. I think you probably either need front or side, but I want to show you both options so you can see which you prefer. So definitely not as nice to connect up these ones as the magnetic ones. So we're going to plug our cable extension into our bottom fan. We can then set our middle fan into place, and we're going just to daisy chain these fans together. And you'll notice I've got all the cables coming out this side, so we're not going to be able to see them when we look in from the side of the case. And then we've got our final fan. We'll take the daisy chainable connector coming from the middle fan and plug it into place. Then I just need to transfer these into the inside of the case, and we'll get them screwed into place. So we've got plenty of space for our fan cables in the front panel compartment, so I'm just going to pull them all through. And you'll notice we've got a little cutout down here. So that it's in a little cabled raceway where all our front panels are running. So I'm just going to feed our fan cables through here and all the way to the rear compartment. And at this stage we can replace our front panel. We're now ready to start working on our motherboard, where we're going to be installing our CPU, our M.2 SSD, our RAM, and because I'm going with air cooler, we're actually going to install the air cooler before we put the motherboard into the case. To open our socket cover, we're going to push our lever down and out. We'll bring it all the way to the middle of the motherboard, and then we can open the socket cover up. Holding our CPU by the edges and making sure we've got the text the correct way up, we're going to lower it carefully down into the socket. And once we're happy it's sitting correctly, we can go ahead and close the socket cover down. We can then close the lever, and as we do, the black bit of plastic should pop off, and we'll put it into our motherboard box for safekeeping. To remove our M.2 SSD heatsink, we need to push this lever up. We can then lift the heatsink up and lift it away. We need to remember to remove the plastic protection from the heatsink and also the heat pad on the motherboard. We can then insert our M.2 SSD into the slot, and as we flatten it down we can just open this little clip and it's going to hold it in place, and then we can replace the heatsink. We're going to be installing our RAM in the second and fourth slot along from the CPU, so we'll go ahead and open the clips on the slots. Then we just need to line the RAM up with the slot. Once we're happy everything's lined up, it's just some firm pressure and it's going to clip into place. Then it's the same thing with our second stick. The first step in installing our CPU cooler is to remove the stock clips. They're each held on with 2 screws. Next we want to put one of the spacers over each corner. Then we're going to put one of the brackets at the top and one at the bottom, and we'll secure them into place using 4 of the screws. We can then add some thermal paste to the centre of the CPU. To install our CPU cooler, we're going to need to temporarily unclip our middle fan. So we can just pull the little wire clip on this side, free up the clip on the other side as well, and that's going to allow us to lift the fan up and remove it. And we need to remember to remove the plastic protection. We can then lower the CPU cooler down, line it up with the brackets beneath, and then we're just going to want to tighten up each thumb screw in turn. So just before I set the middle fan back into place, I want to run this USB cable to the ports at the bottom of the motherboard. I don't think the cable is going to be long enough to run behind the motherboard in the case. So I'm just going to route it down the bottom. I'm going to remove our M.2 SSD heatsink, and then we can pass the cable through this little channel here. And then we'll plug it into the header in the bottom of the motherboard with the USB text facing up the way. And then I can replace our M.2 SSD heatsink. Our CPU fan header is this one here, so I'm going to take the PWM cable coming from our front fan and we'll plug it in. We've got an ARGB header here to plug our ARGB cable coming from our front fan into place. At this stage we can replace our middle fan. We can then pass the clips through the holes in the fan, just straighten the fan up, and then we'll pull back here to lock it into place. Then it's exactly the same thing on the top. Last thing to do is join our rear fan into the splitter cable coming from our front fan, and then I can just manage all the excess cable at the top. We can then insert the motherboard into the case, line it up with the standoffs at the back, and then we'll secure it into place with 9 of the motherboard screws from the case accessory box, and you will find it's easier lying the case down on its back. And at this stage we can remove the plastic protection from our CPU cooler. Next thing to do is get all our case and fan cables plugged in. So our HD audio cable is going to go into this header at the bottom left of the motherboard. So we'll go ahead and pass it in through the cutout. We'll get it lined up with the header and push into place. Then we've got 2 system fan headers here, so I'm going to bring the cables coming from our fans through and get them plugged into place. And then we have another 2 system fan headers here. So we'll take the cables again coming from our final 2 fans and get them plugged in. And our front panel connectors are going to go into this header at the bottom right of the motherboard, and we're going to plug it into the pins over at the left hand side with the front panel text facing up the way. Our USB 3.0 cable is going to go into this header here. So we can go ahead and bring the cable through the cutout. We'll line it up with the header and push into place. And then we've got our front panel type C header here. So we'll bring our cable through the cutout, line it up and push into place. I've gone ahead and plugged the cables into our power supply that we're going to need. So I plugged in a 24-pin motherboard cable, 2 8-pin EPS cables to provide additional power to our CPU, and a 12-volt 2x6 cable to power our graphics card. So we can install our power supply at the top with the fan facing down the way, and we'll secure the fan into place at the back with 4 of the power supply screws. We're going to need both an 8 and a 4-pin EPS cable to run additional power to our CPU. So one of our 8-pin cables we can simply split into 2, and then we're going to pass the cables through the rubber grommets at the top. Not so easy for me to get you a good shot of this because our CPU cooler is blocking a fair bit of the room, but you can see at the top left of the motherboard we've got both our 8 and 4-pin EPS cables. So we'll bring them through the rubber grommet and get them plugged into place. And then we've got our 24-pin cable into this header here. So we'll go ahead and bring the cable through the cutout and get it plugged into place. And just pull all the excess cable through to the back. So before we install our GPU, I want to assemble our GPU support bracket. So we've got this little foot and it's going to clip onto here. And then we can take this little bracket, slide it into place here, and we'll take this thumb screw and secure it into place. Then we can turn the bracket round and we're going to fix it to our graphics card with 2 screws with plastic washers on them. And to help us install our graphics card, I'm just going to pull this all the way up to the top and then tighten up the thumb screw, and that's going to keep the GPU support bracket out of the way. Once we have installed things in the case, I am going to want to turn this round so that it's not putting pressure on the fans underneath the graphics card and it's actually going to find the solid surface of the case. But just to get it installed, we'll leave it round this way. So to install our graphics card, we're going to need to remove the first, second and third expansion slot covers from the top. Then we just need to push this button to open the clip in the top PCIe slot. So next we can go ahead and line our graphics card up with the slot. And then once we're happy everything's lined up, it's just some firm pressure and the graphics card's going to clip into place. And we can go ahead and secure it into place with the 3 thumb screws we've just removed. So now we've got our GPU support bracket to install, so I'm going to loosen the thumb screw at the top. So that's going to allow me to slide the bracket down. Once we've got it below our side fans, I'm going to flip it around 180 degrees so it's pointing towards the back of the case. And you can see in this position it's resting down on the solid bit of the case and not our fans at the bottom. And then just going to push our GPU up to where I'm happy it's straight. And once I'm happy it's straight, I'm just going to tighten up that thumb screw. So next I'm going to bring our 12-volt 2x6 cable through the cutout. We'll line it up with the graphics card and push into place. And then I'm just going to pull the excess cable over the top of the graphics card to the back. Okay, last thing to do is some cable management and get the panels back on again. Okay, so I've gone ahead and got the PC set up. If you don't know how to install Windows, the drivers, the RGB software, enter the BIOS, update the BIOS, adjust all your BIOS settings. I've made another video that covers all of that, and you'll find a link to that video in the description. The only thing I won't show you is how to set up the screen on our CPU cooler, but all you're simply going to do is download the Enermax tuner software, follow the options to install it, and when you open it up, all you need to do is select what you want to appear on the screen and adjust the interval you want each item appearing for. In terms of our temperatures, our Ryzen 7 9700X idled at 40 degrees and reached a maximum of 71 degrees during a 10-minute Ida64 stability test. The Aorus Master 4070 Ti idled at 29 degrees and reached a maximum of 60 degrees during the stability test. In terms of noise, we had average noise levels of 35 decibels at idle and 41 decibels under load. So the Hyte X50 is available in a whole variety of colours for just under $160 for the version that has the tempered glass panel on the side and top, but they do offer a slightly cheaper version. It costs you $30 less, and it has a mesh panel on the side and top, and they're calling that their model. So when you first look at that price, it does seem pretty reasonable for a case that looks this good with the tempered glass on the side and the top, but the one thing you haven't factored in is the cost for fans. Now, you do have a recessed area at the bottom, so I don't think it's going to look great if you don't install any fans there. And for any case where you've got fan mounting on the side, if you care about aesthetics, and why would you buy a case like this if you don't? It's not going to look great leaving that side mounting without any fans installed on it. So actually, when you add up the amount of money it's going to cost you for fans, and because aesthetics is important, you're going to go with good reverse blade fans, it's going to be quite an expensive case when you put everything together. The other thing I'm not particularly sold on is having the power supply at the top. I can see why Hyte have done it. They want to leave the bottom of the case completely open for airflow and bringing plenty of cool air into your graphics card. And really having the power supply at the top does allow you to do this. But the other thing Hyte have done is a curved tempered glass panel over the side and top of the case. And certainly when you look in the top, you're only really able to see half of your build through that very small cutout towards the front of the case. And all you can see is this top of the power supply at the other side. So when you compare this to something like the O11 Vision, where you can actually see all your build in from the top, in terms of aesthetics, it doesn't work quite as well. I think the only other thing that I thought was missing from this case was a GPU support bracket, particularly given that the case supports really large graphics cards, and the fact that you've got the recessed area at the bottom where you're going to be installing fans, it's going to make it quite difficult to install a lot of the GPU support brackets that come with your graphics card, and it would have been really nice to have seen Hyte include one of these with the case. So in terms of what I liked about the case, I think the build quality is excellent throughout, and at the back I thought cable management was excellent, and a large part of that was due to Hyte including only the right length of your case cables and not having a whole lot of excessive cable. So it is nice to have something different from Hyte rather than just another rectangular box, and certainly with all the vivid colours they're offering this case in, if you have this sitting on your desk, it is going to get some attention when people walk into the room. In terms of the aesthetics, I like it, but I don't love it. Airflow is good, but I much prefer the look of the O11 Vision with that tempered glass on the front, the side and the top, giving you that unobstructed view into the case. Downside of that case compared to this one is that it is a dual chamber case, so it's going to be a bit wider. The advantage of this that Hyte have done is it's going to take up a smaller footprint on your desk, but the downside is you have to have that power supply at the top. So you just have to take a look at all the options. For some people, this sort of quirky design will appeal to them. For me, there's cases I like the look of better, but if this case is something that appeals to you visually, I can recommend it because the build quality and all the other factors in it are really good. So hoping you have enjoyed this full step-by-step PC build guide. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well.